Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Here with your hosts, Jacob Smedley,
Justin Rehammer,
and Nathan Romanot.
with today's special guests.
Cameron Whitney.
Our topics today: the NFL Draft is a few days away. We break down our top 10 picks, some surprise picks, and who our team is going to choose in the first round. Also, playoffs are underway for some winter sports, NHL and NBA taking center stage as the playoffs are underway. Now here's Sam. No, it's Justin here with us talking NFL, the draft special, our yearly draft special. Justin, take it away.
Thank you, Jacob. Of course, we miss Sam and Joey too. He's usually around for these things, but man, everybody's got work. College finals are coming up, but we're still here talking about the 2023 NFL Draft, which is coming up in just a few days. So let's get right to it with the first overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. I believe the Carolina Panthers, who traded up for this pick, no surprise, we know what they want. They're looking for a quarterback. I believe they will select quarterback Bryce Young out of Alabama. He's, in my opinion, the best quarterback in this draft. He has the most talent. He's the most NFL ready, and I think that he's going to be the clear number one pick.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Justin. You are correct, if you will. I agree. I think Bryce Young is a difference maker on and off the field, and yeah, I think you trade away that haul that the Panthers gave the Bears. In this sense, to get a guy like Bryce Young who can change the game not only with his legs but through the air. I think he's one of those guys that still can develop passing the football, but a very dynamic cornerstone player that this Panthers team needs, the new head coach Frank Reich needs, and it's between Young and Stroud here. That's kind of really the debate at the top, but I think Young really stands out and can anchor that Panthers franchise.
Well, guys, I'm going to go in a different direction here. And I am going to go for the man you've just mentioned, C.J. Stroud, which, of course, as a Penn State student myself, pains me to say. But I think the difference here, for me, looking at it in my eyes, as much as I hate to say it, is size. And Frank Wright has alluded to this. He values size in a quarterback at the quarterback position. Bryce Young is not a very big guy. He's very skilled, but that could hamper him. And we've seen smaller quarterbacks, like Kyler Murray and Tua, have their injury issues, especially recently in the past. I think that C.J. Stroud, probably played the best game of his college career in the last game of his college career against the Georgia Bulldogs in the national semifinal. I just think he brings a lot to the table, arm strength, his size, and I think that, like you said, with Bryce Young, who could be developed, I think C.J. Stroud could also be very well developed. And whilst I could see it going either way, in my personal opinion, I just believe they will go C.J. Stroud.
I agree with Justin. I think they're going to go with Bryce Young. And the only reason I think they're going to go with Bryce Young is because he has a higher prospect over C.J. Stroud. Now, I know it's going to go either one or two, and they could go either one. Both quarterbacks have potential to be great in the NFL. Obviously, you never know in the NFL. But I think just with terms of the draft prospect, it's going to be Bryce Young, the number one overall pick.
Yes, and of course, as you mentioned, C.J. Stroud, he's right up there, and so he's going to go number two. I'm just going to say it right there. Houston Texans, second overall pick. They're going to pick quarterback C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. He is the second best quarterback in this draft, undeniably. It's going to be 1-2 either way. I can't fault you for picking either way, so I've have pretty much no doubt in my mind that whichever one you picked, you're going to pick the opposite for the second pick here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think what C.J. Stroud brings to the table, I think we've all kind of alluded to it so far. These guys are 1 and 2 for a reason, the two best quarterbacks in this draft and the skill set that they present. But looking at the Texans as a team, of course, one of them is going to be available, and both bring similar skill sets. But C.J. Stroud, I know player comps are a bit bit crazy, but a younger version. I know he's very vilified, and rightfully so in the media, but Deshaun Watson, I think he has that talent to be that young Deshaun Watson type of player when he was in Houston and really taking them and taking control of that franchise like he did. I think either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud can do that. And in my case, CJ Stroud is tasked with that responsibility for a team that has been making some better decisions the past few years.
Yeah, as Justin said, it's basically a 1 and 2 race here. As I had Stroud at 1, Bryce Young is my number 2. I could obviously see it flip-flopping, but Bryce Young is a terrific talent. I do believe he's probably the most NFL-ready quarterback in the draft, and I think that he'll bring a lot to the table for Houston, and if that's where he ends up, or Carolina, but as it stands for me, I just have Young at 2.
Yeah, then let's talk about the third overall pick here. The Arizona Cardinals are going to be selecting, for me, edge rusher Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. Listen, guys, they don't really need a quarterback yet. All right, because to me, Kyler Murray, he's still young. He can still develop more, and he got hurt last year. So I'm not going to put too much judgment on him. He plays well when he plays. So I think that they need to strengthen that defense, specifically the defensive line. They need to rush the quarterback, and I think that a guy like Will Anderson Jr. will really help them accomplish this. So that's who I'm going with for my third pick.
With my third pick, I'm going to go with Tyree Wilson, and I agree with you that they need to go defense because now you got to remember J.J. Watt doesn't play anymore, so they're not going to have anybody to support that defensive line. They're going to have to be looking for somebody that's really going to put pressure on the quarterback, and I think they could go with many options here, I think, and I agree with you as well. I think they could go with him as well, but I think they're going to go with Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, defensive end.
I agree with you, Justin. I think Will Anderson is the spot here for Arizona. Taking the torch from J.J. Watt. They need an anchor on that defensive side. I think they need a lot of things. I think both of the trenches for the Cardinals, I could see them, possibly taking a offensive lineman pick later on in the draft, but taking a difference maker like Will Anderson, what he did for that defense in Alabama in 2022-2023 season, I think could take this team to the next level. They need that guy to match the energy of the other teams in their division that have guys like that can rush the quarterback with such a great efficiency, if you will. So I agree, but I'm going with Anderson.
Well, I'm a little different here from you guys as well, and I think I alluded to this to you, Jake, specifically before the podcast. Would I make this pick? No. But just because of who the Arizona Cardinals are as an organization, especially as recently, I don't think they're the smartest. I think that, they're going to go defensive line Jalen Carter out of Georgia, who had a lot of hype around him going into the early part of the college football season. Had a terrific year. A lot of people saw him as the best defensive player available and maybe the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, there's been some recent things surrounding his pro day, his performance, and his weight and stuff like that. But I think that he is overall one of the best talents in this draft. I think that if he can, settle down maybe, he'll have a very good NFL career. And I will reiterate this. I personally probably wouldn't take them. I like Will Anderson. I like the edge. But I'm just going based off what I think the Cardinals will do just because I don't think they're the most, savvy organization. I think they're going to go Jalen Carter.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Nate. Didn't think about it that way. But let's move on then to the Indianapolis Colts at number 4. I have them selecting quarterback Anthony Richards out of Florida. I think that they're shopping for a quarterback at this point. They've got nobody really, to take the helm after Matty Ice took his leave. So I think that they're going to pick Richards because he's that kind of guy, similar kind of to Josh Allen, larger build. He's got a cannon for an arm, a lot of, talent. So I think that they're going to try and develop him and see where he takes them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Justin. I think that's the pick there. That's the move. I think that Richardson brings a dynamic pace to the game, and the Colts breaking the veteran quarterback curse. I think they do that, like not necessarily curse, but their decision making over the past few years. I think he's the right guy. I think the debate at that point, you have Richardson and Levis in there. Both of them, talented, showed out at the pro day, but I think Richardson, brings that, I think, ready now quarterback that the Colts need. He'll need some developing, as all of them need, but that guy that you can plug and play right away. So I agree with you, me and you, Justin. First 4 picks right on the mark.
Yeah, I agree. I have Anthony Richardson too, and it's because the Colts do need a quarterback. They had Matt Ryan. Obviously, he wasn't the answer. Had a terrible year. They were still trying to figure out their coaching there too for a bit. But yeah, they definitely need a quarterback, and besides C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, who are automatically going to be gone, your next best option is going to be Anthony Richardson. So yeah, I agree with that.
For me at number 4, listen, I'm happy to be the one who's being different in this draft, I guess I'll say. I'm going to go, and I will perfectly admit, this is Penn State biased here, baby. I'm going Will Levis. As you guys said, the Colts clearly need a quarterback, and whilst Anthony Richardson is a terrific prospect, I'm going with my guy Will Levis. Played here at Penn State. Obviously, we chose Sean Clifford over him, and thus he moved on to Kentucky, where he had a very successful career. As you can see, he's considered a top draft prospect this year, and comparatively, Sean Clifford is not considered a top draft prospect this year. But yeah, I like Will Levis. He's got a great arm. And yeah, I'm gonna support the former Penn Stater going at 4 to the Colts.
Yeah, then let's talk about the number 5 overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks. I have them taking edge rusher Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. I think that the Seattle Seahawks, they need a guy at the edge position. They need to build up their defense. Their offense actually performed quite well last year. Their defense kind of held them back though in a lot of games. So I think building up that line is the first step to really, kind of getting back on their feet, maybe getting to more like Legions of Boom type stuff. So I think that that's what they're going to be doing.
My pick for the Seahawks, I would say for the 5th pick, I'm going first time differing from you, Justin. I'm going Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. I think what the Seahawks, going to the Legion of Boom, I'm going to stick with that argument. I'm going to hold you. What was good with that Legion of Boom, Justin? The secondary. And what was their calling card last year? Really on that defense? The secondary. And I think they're going to continue to build that with Witherspoon out of Illinois. I think, again, he's a guy that just Seattle, even throughout the years, losing those guys, really a secondary factory, churning out guys who really went under the radar in the draft. And I think another guy that, outside of the top 5, but I think the Seahawks take him there and he could be used and really explosive in that role.
You know what? I do agree with you, Justin, that they're going to go with the edge rusher, but I think they're going to go with Will Anderson Jr. And I think, in my opinion, he's the best edge rusher in the draft. He's a great ball player, and I think the Seahawks definitely need somebody on that defense. So I think the safest pick for them would probably be to go with Will Anderson Jr.
Great pick, Cam. Great pick. I also have edge rusher here, Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama. Amazing talent. He had a great career at Alabama, playing there, very successful. And whilst I could potentially see him going higher, I think that this is a great spot for him, a great fit. Seahawks need of an edge rusher, and I think that he will fill that need terrifically. I think that Will Anderson will go 5 to the Seahawks.
Right then, for the 6th overall pick in our 2023 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions, I have them selecting defensive tackle Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Listen, he's, like you said, very good player, and one of the best in the defensive picks in the draft. So I think that the Detroit Lions, they're going to, another team that wants to build up that defense, really let them down last year because they had a great offense, especially at the start of the season. Their offense was among top 5. So I think that building back up that defense is going to be a top priority for them, and we're better to start than the interior of the D-line.
Justin, are we on 5 of 6? You better believe we are. Jalen Carter, I have it number 6 as well. We got a little off kilter there with 5, but 6, I'm right there with you. Pairing Carter alongside Aiden Hutchinson, I think is going to be huge. That's where the bread and butter of the Lions defense starts. I could see them going corner as well with trading away Okuda to the Falcons, maybe Witherspoon in there as well, but I think Carter is a difference maker, a run stuffer in front, and can be a difference maker for the Lions defensively.
Wow, Jake just took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I'm going Jalen Carter too, but I was thinking they could have went with corner, which I was thinking they could have went with Witherspoon, because they do got to build up that defense. That offense was great last year, but it all starts with the defense. And what Jacob was saying with Aiden Hutchinson, it starts with him and Aiden Hutchinson. So I think the safest pick for the Detroit Lions would be to go with Jalen Carter.
As you guys said, defensive needs here are a top priority for the the Lions, and I do believe that with that 6th overall pick, they will select cornerback Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois, arguably the best cornerback in this draft. Very talented, as you said. Defense, very big need for this Lions team, especially if they want to make a playoff push this year. And I think that there's no better way to start than by going in the secondary with Witherspoon. And also, I saw that they got rid of Jeff Okuda recently, so definitely a need they need to fill there in Detroit at cornerback, and I think Witherspoon would be a great fit.
Of course. Well, Nate, you accidentally mentioned the Raiders there, but they are up at number 7. You also mentioned Witherspoon, and that's who I have coincidentally going number 7. Devon Witherspoon going over to the Las Vegas Raiders. They need secondary help. That was one of their biggest concerns last year, and so I believe that a guy like Witherspoon, arguably best corner in the draft, he's going to be that guy that really solidifies that unit and helps them out in the run and the pass game.
Justin, we're going to differ again. Now, this is a bold pick for me. I think Will Levis to the Raiders. I know they just got Jimmy G, but Will Levis I think he's going to be that quarterback this year. Wait a year, learned under Jimmy G and Josh McDaniels in that Raiders system. I think they're drafting for the future. I know you gave Jimmy Garoppolo all that money, but right now, is he that glorified starter that you want to be building your team around? I think this is an opportunity where you grab and kind of stash that guy. The Eagles did it with Jalen Hurts under Wentz. They gave him that contract. They got Hurts, and we know what that became. Highest player in NFL history now. Now you have Will Levis. I mean, maybe not the same situation, but an opportunity to build around that.
My opinion is the Raiders are the stupidest organization in the National Football League. I actually do like Jake's point of going with quarterback, because, you don't know how Jimmy G is going to turn out. He did play in San Fran, and they obviously are a good organization, but you never know how he's going to actually play. And I guess you can't really doubt a quarterback who's been in the league for some time. But I'm going to go with a corner and Devon Witherspoon, just like Justin said. I think they need more defensive help. I mean, they do have Max Crosby to help them out too. He's a very good player. But I just think their safest pick here would be to go with Devon Witherspoon.
So this was a pick that personally I was torn between when I was looking at this draft list. And Jake, I love the point you made about the quarterback. And that is why, as I already had Will Levis going in the draft, I think that the Raiders will select Anthony Richardson out of Florida with this pick. I think that he'd be a great guy, if he's still there, to pick up and develop under Jimmy Garoppolo, watch him grow. I think that's what he needs, and who knows, a couple years down the line, he could be really something special if he is able to develop in that organization. They obviously need defensive help. I was highly considering cornerback here for them, because the Raiders do need that defensive help. But ultimately, I just think if Richardson's there, they got to pull the trigger and go with him. So I have Anthony Richardson going to the Raiders.
With the 8th pick in this 2023 NFL Draft, we have the Atlanta Falcons selecting, and I've got them going with edge rusher Miles Murphy out of Clemson. this might be a little bit of a interesting pick for you guys, but they need an edge rusher, and I'm going with Murphy because he's really good. He's not obviously as good as the previously mentioned Will Anderson Jr., of course, but he is still a very good player. I think that they're building up a new defense, that they have a new look 3-4 defense going, and I think that a guy like Miles Murphy is going to be an excellent fit with his side speed and skills.
I see where you're coming from, Justin. Keeping Miles Murphy home down there in the South, going Clemson to Atlanta, but I'm going to the other trenches. I'm going offensive line and picking Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. I think, again, you're starting to build that offense around Desmond Ridder. What's the first thing you want to do? And aside from adding weapons for a young quarterback, is protect him. And I think that we see it with the Lions, with Jared Goff and what they were doing there last year. You see it with what they're trying to do in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and building that offensive line. I think it starts with the tackle Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State.
No, I do like what you both are saying, and it makes perfect sense. But I think I'm going to go with corner Christian Gonzalez here, and the only reason for that is because the Falcons did let go of Isaiah Oliver in free agency, and he was not that bad of a corner when he played. So I think they're going to need more secondary help, and the way to build up that secondary is by adding another corner, and I think that's who they're going to go with.
Once again, Cam, I love the pick. Christian Gonzalez, cornerback out of Oregon University. He's, very talented prospect. Had a great career there in Oregon. And as you said, the Falcons are in need of a cornerback. And I do believe that Christian Gonzalez can fill that need. And I think he's got a lot of potential to be one of the best and exciting young cornerbacks in the league. So I'm going to go with Christian Gonzalez.
Right, now let's talk about the team that traded out of the number one spot to receive every other pick in the draft. Basically, we got the Chicago Bears, who got that pick from the Carolina Panthers. I think they're going to be taking offensive tackle Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, because the Bears, they want to protect Justin Fields. As you said, Jacob, with the Falcons, the Bears are trying to build up around Justin Fields. He had a good season last year, but he took some hits that he should have been taking, and so I think they're going to have to build up that O-line, get him some protection, and then maybe focus on some weapons later on.
Now I'm going to go with another bold pick, maybe the boldest pick for me. Bijan Robinson to the Bears. Look at what they've done this offseason. They got more. They got more for Justin Fields as a weapon. I think adding Bijan Robinson in the backfield. They just let David Montgomery go to the Lions. Bijan Robinson is someone that can help out Justin Fields in the backfield right away. This Bears team is getting scary. The Bears, gentlemen. Pick Bijan Robinson at 9. I think that's a bold move, but it's a Bears move that could prove dividends later.
All right, another stupid organization here. I think, I'm going to go with what Justin said. They need to build around protecting Justin Fields. That man was taking hits after hits after hits last season, and they never gave him protection. He never had time to really throw it down the field to receivers such as Chase Claypool, blah blah blah. I don't know any of their other, Darnell Mooney. I can't think of any other receivers they have on that team at the moment. But with my pick, I think they're going to go with Broderick Jones, offensive tackle. I think they just need somebody else on that O-line to protect for Justin Fields, and it only makes sense that they go offensive tackle.
Justin, Cam, I agree with both you guys as well. O-line, you need to protect your quarterback in this day and age. Always you need to protect your quarterback, as we've seen with, say, Joe Burrow, for example. You need the O-line, you need that protection. You do not want your franchise quarterback getting injured. And so with that being said, I believe that the Bears will select Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle out of Northwestern University. Big guy, played Big Ten football. I think he's just what the Bears need and just what they're looking for in an offensive tackle.
Hold on. Yeah, my argument here. I'm just gonna go back. You mentioned the Bengals, the Jamar Chase pick. All right. Everyone and their mother was telling the Bengals to pick an offensive lineman. Who did they pick? They
You're right.
picked Jamar Chase, and he
You're
became a
right.
difference maker on the team. That's
You're
that's
right.
that's what
You're
I'm
right.
just gonna say.
I
The hill
will.
I'm
I
gonna
will
die on.
counter. I'm going to counter with that and say that, yeah, counter. My argument is running backs are a bit more easily accessible. You can find gems of running backs later in the draft. I know Bijan is a terrific guy, as you'll see. With my order here, what I have. But I just I feel that you need that offensive line protection. Look, well, Joe Burrow, I believe he tore his ACL. So, there was a consequence to that selection in the end. I feel so. That's all I'm going to say. But you do make a good point there, Jay.
Counter as well. The Bengals have a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent in their receiver room. They didn't necessarily need Chase, although he's a great addition. But when the last year when they went on that Super Bowl run, the biggest problem with their team was O-line, and that's what lost them the game in the Super Bowl when Von Miller sacked, Joe Burrow. So I believe personally that if they had chosen an offensive lineman, not saying that it would have happened, but maybe they could have won the Super Bowl.
You could also argue they might not have made it that far without Jamar Chase, though. So.
Very, very valid counter arguments, gentlemen. I'm going bold here. As
I like
Doritos
the
say, go
boldness.
bold.
I appreciate the boldness.
Hashtag not sponsored. But now let's get to the last pick in the top 10 with the Philadelphia Eagles. I have them selecting safety Brian Branch out of Alabama. I think that the biggest concern with the Eagles moving forward is going to be their secondary. Losing a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, it's kind of tough, and so you want to build that up in any way you can. I think that Brian Branch is just the best secondary guy available at this point in time, and so I think that's who that Howie Roseman will select. I think that he's a good GM and he's going to pick the best player available, and that is who I believe it is.
Yeah, I agree, Justin. I agree. I know the Eagles lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson this offseason to the Lions. There is that open spot. They did get Terrell Edmonds from the Steelers, picking him up to add to that secondary. I know Nolan Smith has been in the conversation as well, the defensive end from Georgia, in that conversation at 10. I honestly, if the Eagles are going to make a pick, if Skoronski's available, I think they take him as a guy that he can continue to learn. The Eagles pump out starting offensive linemen like it's nobody's business. He's a guy that can stay behind Johnson, be able to be versatile, move around a little bit, especially with Kelsey, his future uncertain. But I possibly could see them also trading back if they see a guy like Brian Branch available later on in the middle, or if they see a guy maybe a few picks down, I could see them trading. But if they do make the pick, I think it's Skoronski.
I'm gonna go with a really bold pick here, and it's the Eagles. I don't know, but like Justin said, it stinks that they're losing Sauce Gardner. That's a very tough loss, but I think they're going to go defensive here, and they're going to go with Deontay Banks. I think he's going to be a good addition to that secondary. I mean, they still have Darius Slay, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Slay and Bradbury, they both.
Yeah,
both
Slay and Bradbury. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going with the bold pick here. I mean, I think they can go in they have a very solid team, but it's just in terms of what they tend to want to go with, but I think I'm just going to take a bold pick here and go with Deontay Banks.
Here we come to my 10th overall pick. The Eagles do end up making this pick. This is just a fun one for me because I think that he would fit great into the Eagles, who already have so much on this team. The guy we just talked about. I do have Bijan Robinson for the Eagles. The Eagles, they need a running back, and I think that he'd be a great addition for them. I think Eagles fans would agree for the most part, and I don't think the same argument applies here. I think the Eagles' O-line is pretty stable. They have a core there. They obviously were able to protect Jalen Hurts last year. I think they'll be able to do the same this year. I don't think it's a necessity to go O-line here if they draft. I think Bijan would be a fantastic addition. Would really, that offense already where it's at. I think with Bijan, that would be really exciting to see.
I'm just thinking with the rumors. I don't know if any of you guys have been seeing. We talked about it before the podcast. Derrick Henry potentially. I'm not saying he's going to go to the Eagles. There was a tweet for AJ Brown about it. Teams might be making phone calls, but I know Tennessee is also in there at number 11. I know we won't make the pick for them, but they could possibly pair that pick with Henry to move up if another opportunity presents itself.
But now we're getting to the fun section here where we pick our favorite teams. Jacob, I know you already had your pick in for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Nate, I know that your team isn't picking in the first round, but do it this part with you will. But for me, the Bills are picking at number 27, and I've got us if we stay there and if he's available, I got us picking wide receiver Jordan Addison out of USC. This is, I think, a top need for the Bills. They need more help in their receiver room. I know how a lot of people say that, we need a linebacker now with the loss of Tremaine Edmonds, or we need O-linemen or whatever, but they addressed the O-line situation in free agency, and I've heard whispers from within the organization saying that they're not going to draft a linebacker. They're going to just promote from within. So I personally believe that they're going to go with somebody who can help out the receiving room, somebody opposite Diggs, opposite Davis, and somebody who can, be that guy that when Josh Allen is scrambling out of the pocket, he gets open.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick. Do you think Quentin Johnson's also there from TCU? Is there something that you think Addison really stands out to fit that Bill system, or just do you think he's available at that point?
I think that he's going to be available, but at the same time, I think he also does possess an ability to get open beyond whatever is drawn on the whiteboard, which is a huge factor for the Bills because you have Josh Allen who's going to be extending the play, 50-60% of the time. So if you can get open, you're going to want a guy that can get open. I think that Addison has that unique ability.
Yeah, for the Eagles, I know we went over the 10th pick. I personally, if they do pick at 10, I think it's Skoronski, maybe Bijan at 10. As we were talking earlier, don't know how far he will fall. Of course, with the whole, stigma with running backs, as you mentioned, Nate, they're very versatile. You can get a guy in the later rounds for the Eagles, even with their signing of Kenneth Walker in free agency, or my wrong Seahawks by my regardless at 10, I feel like Howie Roseman and one of those picks is going to get a D-line or O-line guy, whether that's Skoronski on the O-line, whether that's Nolan Smith on the D end. But again, both picks I think are very versatile with the Eagles, like we mentioned, in the position they are as a franchise. They can be able to maneuver those, pivot back, potentially get a trade and accumulate more picks in the future.
Just a quick question, Jake. What, in your opinion, do you think is like the chance of the Eagles moving that 10 pick, not drafting there? What would you put the chance at?
I would say about 50%. I think it's 50-50, honestly. I think this is an opportunity 50-50. I think it can happen either way depending on what happens in front of them. And I think that changes a lot.
So, obviously, I'm a Steelers fan. I would be happy with them going for either one, either offensive line or corner, because they need another lockdown corner, or they need more help on that O-line. They did do a lot in free agency, which I am very happy about, but I think with the corner, I think they should go with Joey Porter Jr. He's probably one of my favorite corners in the draft. Being a little biased like Nate is, I'm a Penn State fan. So I do like Joey Porter, but, if they can't get Joey Porter, I would love them to get Peter Skoronski, which he could also go earlier in the earlier rounds too. But, either pick I would be fine with. They really need help with that O-line, but they're a very young, talented team. But it all starts with building around Kenny, too. Kenny's a very young dude. He needs time to adapt, and you got to be able to protect him very well. We also have a very good running back group. So, once you start with Kenny, you build your way up from there, and you just keep rebuilding and rebuilding, They already added Patrick Peterson on the offseason this year. So I think having another lockdown corner would just help them a lot more in getting that, which is why I want them to get Joey Porter Jr.
I love the Joey Porter Jr. shout out, Cam, and I think that him, if he was to be drafted there, that'd be great to be under the tutelage of Patrick Peterson there in the secondary. I think that'd work out really well for him, and helping him go forward in his career. As Justin said, the Broncos, we do not have a first-round pick this year, for obvious reasons, trading for Mr. Russell Wilson. However, I'll go with another team that I would like to mention and talk about, the Giants. And funny enough here, Justin, I did have the Giants at 25 taking Mr. Jordan Addison at receiver.
Might have to jump over him.
Indeed, it would be unfortunate for you, you Bills Mafia fans up in New York State area there, I think he's a very talented receiver. As we know, the Giants' receiving room is not...
something to be desired.
Yes, not very desirable at the moment. They did acquire Waller in a trade, a good tight end. Hopefully he can stay healthy for them this year and really produce and help Daniel Jones. But I think taking a receiver would be a smart choice, and I think that Jordan Addison has a big upside, and I think that he would really help Daniel Jones in that offense in New York.
Thank you, Justin, guys, for another great draft coverage. Smaller numbers this year, but we still tackled the coverage of the top 10 picks and our picks for the first round as we creep into May. Gentlemen, the playoffs, NHL playoffs and NBA playoffs are underway. The first round series for each sport's getting going. Guys, first off, maybe let's start in the NBA here. We'll move to the NHL in a second. Which series has been the most surprising to you? Maybe which team has stood out the most so far in the 2023 playoffs?
I actually got to go with the Cavaliers and Knicks. I thought they would actually match up very well in the playoffs, but just seeing how the Knicks are kind of rolling all over the Cavaliers is kind of a shocking to me. That would be my pick if I had to pick a team. That was just shocking.
Yeah, I kind of to a degree agree with you there, Cam. I thought that this the Knicks-Cavs series would be more of a 6-7 game kind of series, and still very well could be, although based on what we've seen through the first 4 games, the Knicks really seem to have a good handle on that Cavs team. The Cavs have struggled shooting the ball. Donovan Mitchell today, especially, I watched, could not, make a bucket to save his life in that second half of the game. Something's just not clicking there. I think, we're going to see the Knicks progress here, whether they, get it in Game 5 or Game 6. We'll see, but definitely a surprise there for me as well. But I'm going to go with the Heat-Milwaukee series, and now this is somewhat affected by the injury of Giannis. However, seeing Miami out to a 2-1 lead is a kind of surprise for me, considering, I do view the Bucks as a top 2 team in the league. I think that them in Boston, you can argue, who's better, but I do believe those 2 teams are the best 2 teams in the league, and seeing Milwaukee struggle as they have, even without Giannis, has surprised me a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a different team than you guys, too, guys. I know that the Kings, they have been a great run. I'm going to be rooting for them against the Warriors in that first round series. I think they have a lot of potential. De'Aaron Fox really cementing himself as a superstar in this game. I'm going to go with the Lakers and Grizzlies series. What I've seen from the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that had playoff aspirations coming into the year with LeBron James and company, getting that 9 seed, 8, 7 seed again, and going up against a Grizzlies team with all of that drama around Ja Morant, playing better without him, not having him on the floor, winning that second game, and then the Lakers taking game 3. I think if they win this series, there is definitely some worthy noise around the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh yeah, 100%. I agree. I know. There will be a lot of noise if they do definitely win this series. They're one of those teams that are kind of sneaking along behind, but you can never obviously count out LeBron James. But they also do have a talented roster, and I think if they can beat the Grizzlies, I think they will definitely make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jake. I mean, and Cam as well. You can never count out, LeBron and AD, two, superstars of the game without a doubt. I still I don't view the Lakers as a championship team this year. I can't really see it yet. To your point, Ja did miss game 2, which the Grizzlies ended up winning, and they ended up losing game 3 when he came back, although not for any fault of his, as he had a terrific offensive performance. I still think that this series is one that is probably going to go 6 or 7 games. I do think that the Grizzlies can win this game 4 and take it back with home court advantage. We'll see what happens. Another series out there in LA, the Clippers, Phoenix, I'll mention. The Clippers, after that game 1 win, kind of had me a little surprised, but no Paul George going into that series. Kawhi had a great game, was able to get away. Westbrook, not the best game 1, but they ended up winning. And, then the news comes out, Kawhi Leonard, he's injured, he can't play, and now they find themselves, I believe they're down 3-1 currently as it stands, without Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. And the story goes on, I guess, for the Clippers, who just can't seem to have those two guys healthy in time or at the same time for the playoffs. It just never seems to work out.
Yeah, I just can't see any way that the Clippers come back and beat the Suns at all. With the roster with Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and dealing with injuries like Kawhi is, I just don't think there's any way. Russell Westbrook is so inconsistent all the time. I just don't see any way they can really just come back and beat the Suns at all.
And Westbrook's been turning back the clock, back-to-back 30-point games, really putting the team on his back. But yeah, I think on the Suns side of things, before we move on to the NHL side, it's been starter heavy. And Cam, you mentioned they have Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant. Their bench of Okogie, Bismack Biyombo has been a bit brutal on the scoring side. And is that enough? Is the star-studded lineup enough to push them ahead? We shall see. Hopefully we can break it down further moving forward as we get deeper into the playoffs. But moving over to the NHL, so I'm going to be honest, the NBA playoffs have been a bit more on my radar. So Nate, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong here a few times. The one series I have been tuned into though is that Devils-Rangers series. Of course, those very deep rivals, the Devils were able to get one back. It's now 2-1. But guys, what has stood out on the NHL side of things?
Yeah, Jake, as you mentioned, we have some great series going on over here in the NHL playoffs. The Rangers, Devils, one that I think everybody had circled going into this postseason. Heated rivalry, two teams that are very close geographically speaking, very passionate fan bases. And the Rangers really jumped out in this series, winning the first 2 games in New Jersey by pretty big score lines, 5-1, I believe, in both of those 2 games. And as we saw the other night, the Devils played their best game by far in the series, and they were able to pull off the much-needed win in overtime, thanks to Dougie Hamilton, and a much-needed goal there. Aside from that, in the Eastern Conference, you have Tampa Bay and Toronto rematch this year, which, the first 2 games, night and day. I mean, Tampa Bay comes out, absolutely whoops Toronto in Game 1. Game 2, Toronto bounces back, whoops Tampa Bay. We go to Game 3, very tight, very close game, which, again, we find ourselves in overtime, and we do get a Toronto winner. So that is a game and a series that, personally for me, I'm keeping an eye on. I think that it could go 6 or 7 games, as it did last year. And, we'll see if Toronto can break the curse and finally win a first-round playoff series. But those 2 series in the East have definitely caught my eye.
I'm not going to lie, I don't watch NHL that much. But if there is a series I do tune into, I do like watching Vegas Golden Knights. They're facing the Winnipeg Jets, and I've seen they they're going back and forth right now. They just had a game yesterday, double overtime, that the Golden Knights did win 5-4. But I think that's a series I'm definitely going to be tuning into.
I agree with you, Cam. I'm going to go with another series. I'm going to go out west. Minnesota and Dallas. Series is 2-2. I think Dallas is one of those dark horse teams in the Western Conference that could come out and make some noise. A almost Avalanche-esque these past few years where they have the talent, the star-studded talent across the board. And hey, rooting for a fellow Jake Odinger in net for the Stars. 37 wins. I think he's going to continue to put on a good performance, and I think the Stars pull out that series. But again, another one I think is going to go to 7 games.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Great series out there in the West. The Minnesota-Dallas series, it's been hot from the start. I happened to just turn on Game 1 at the right time to see, a big hit on Joe Pavelski, a veteran on the Stars. And, he was put into concussion protocol, one of their top scorers. So that series has been very heated. It's very tight. 2-2, as you said today, going back to Dallas for Game 5. We'll see who pulls that one out. But that series is shaping up to go, I think, 7 games in the end here. I really do think that might go 7. And we'll see who pulls it out. Vegas, another great series. Then Winnipeg, double overtime. Don't get it twisted. Overtime in the playoffs is tough. That is another 20-minute period until somebody finally scores a goal. They keep going. It is not anything like the regular season in the NHL. So very tough. I'll also mention that the Seattle Kraken, in only their second season, in their first ever Stanley Cup playoffs, taking on the defending champions, the Colorado Avalanche. That series is currently 2-1 Colorado. The Kraken getting a win in there. They're making it a series. They're not making life easy for the Avalanche, and I think that's always good to see when you have new teams come to the league. As we saw with Vegas when they came in, they made a deep run, and the Kraken, they're right there. They're hanging tough with the Avalanche, and who knows? They might not win this series. I think the Avalanche will win it, but I think this is a great start for the Avalanche. I mean, not the Avalanche, the Kraken, and I think it's definitely something for them to build on in the future out there in the Western Conference.
I agree, Nate. Definitely a lot of series to keep an eye on in both the NBA and NHL playoffs as they get underway and ramp up here in April and May. Thank you for listening. That will be it for this week's episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Check in the draft to see if any of us were right with our picks on Thursday through Saturday night. We'll see. Nate with the shoulder shrug. But again, thank you for listening. For future episodes, tune in on YouTube and on Spotify. Again, thank you, Anchor, for sponsoring this week's episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.